So let's get pixelating. What I start with is this app called Pixelable that was a free app. I paid a couple of dollars for it to support the developer. It's a great app. And I'm going to start with a 16 by 16 size painting. So I'm going to do 16 by 16 so it's square. And then this opens up my canvas. So one resource that I find really helpful in my art is in a website called Color Hunt. So I'm going to go there now. And this just has a bunch of pre-made color themes for you that other people have made, and you can just scroll through there and find something that you like for yours. If you're having trouble coming up with a color scheme, this is a really great place to start. Or if you have no idea and you just want to get painting and you want to start with something, there's some really great colors on here. So I'm going to find one. I like this one. And I am going to just take a screenshot on my iPhone here by pressing the power button and the up volume button at the same time. And that will save it to my photos, and then I'm going to go back to Pixelable. And so the first thing I do when starting a pixel painting or any kind of digital painting is I delete the background. It's usually a white layer, and if you start painting on that white layer, you'll have problems later on if you want to do any kind of recoloring or if you want to put that painting on top of another image. You need some transparency. So I would just go ahead and delete that layer. And if you see this gray and white checkerboard pattern, that means you are successfully transparent. So next, what I do is down here at the bottom of the screen, you'll see all of the tools you have in your toolbox. So I scroll over to the one that says image. And this might be a little different depending on what app you're using, but usually they have this feature. So I'm going to select the image that I want, and I'm just going to zoom in on the portion that I want, which is these colors. Okay. And so that just brought it into my project as a new layer. I'm going to use the color picker tool to select some of these colors. I'm going to choose this color, and I'm going to select the next one in the row. I'm going to choose this color, next one, that color, and that color. Okay, so now I've got those four selected. I don't really need this one anymore. I'm going to delete it. Okay, so now that we've done that, I'm going to move back to the pen tool, and we're ready to get started on our pixel painting. So, think about shapes when you're doing this. If you hold down on the pen tool, you usually will have an option of bigger size pixels to paint with. I'm going to choose a big one because I like to start with big chunks of color, and then sculpt away as I need to. So I just got some little baby chicks. It's springtime here, and I think that they are just super cute, and I want to draw them. So that's what I'll be doing today. So I'm going to draw in like a big chunk for the head, big chunk for the body, something like that. And go back to the smaller brush and kind of fill it in a little bit, and then use the eraser tool to kind of start sculpting away at different parts, and then putting them back in where I feel like they should be. So maybe something like this. And it's good to have some variety in your edges, in the lines that you're making, because if it's just too straight across, it can sometimes get a little boring. So try to give some variety in the edges that you're making. So as you're doing this, it's kind of more like sculpting than it is painting because you're working with these shapes, but you want to try to think about the main characteristics of your character or object that you're painting. You want to not get too bogged down in the details, and you want to simplify whatever you can, because you just want the viewer to be able to see the absolute essentials of the shapes so that they get the idea of what you're making. So now I'm going to draw on some little feet here. Oops, something like that. Okay, and maybe a little beak. So You can start to see how one single pixel can make a huge difference in your entire painting when you're working with such small dimensions like this. So this kind of is starting to look like a full-grown duck, and I don't want that. I want a little chickie. So maybe just one pixel is enough for that beak to give the impression that this is a little baby chick. So, and just play around. Maybe this is too far over. Maybe it needs to be one over. That's pretty cute. Okay, so I'm going to find a blank spot, and I'm going to copy this color. And once you've got your main shape of your object blocked in, you can start to give some dimension to your shapes by subtly varying the color. And you do that with this HSB. So that stands for hue, saturation, and blackness, or it's also sometimes referred to as HSV for hue, saturation, and value. Okay, so now that I've got the main colors blocked in for my chick, I'm going to use the selection tool to select the body and the head of the chick. And then I'm going to use the move tool to move all of that up one square, one pixel. And then I'll press done, and that will deselect my selection. After that, I'll use the pen tool to add a little bit of length to the legs. There you go. And now we're ready to start rendering. Okay, now we're ready to start rendering. And the way that we do that is with the eyedropper tool. So we'll use the dropper to select the orange color of the leg, and then we'll use the hue, saturation, and value slider. So switch over to HSB for hue, saturation, and blackness in this case, and drag the blackness slider down slightly so that I have an orange color that's in shadow. So drag that down. And now switch over to the pen tool and paint in the 2 pixels under the body as well as the entire left leg of the chicken, or on our right side, so that it looks like it's behind or further away from us or under the body of the chicken. Now let's do that one more time to add another layer of shadow to that orange color, the darker orange color. So I'll use the dropper to select the orange, the darker orange, and then I'll drag the slider down a little bit and then switch over to the pen tool and just add 1 pixel under the body so that there's a shadow under that leg as well. Next, we'll do the same thing for the light yellow color of the body. So I'll use the eyedropper tool to select that yellow color and then drag the blackness slider down a little bit so that we have a shadow color, and start painting in all of the pixels that are on the underside of the chick. So by doing this, we're indicating where the light is coming from in our painting. So in this case, I want the light to be coming from up above, or maybe up above and to the left. So I'll paint everything that's down below and down below to the right in this darker color. Let's do that again to add another shade of shadow. So eyedropper to select, then hue, saturation, blackness, and then drag down the blackness. Switch over to the pen tool and then add another layer of shadow. So you don't want to paint over all the same pixels. I'll add in a little wing, and we just want to give a smooth transition from the light yellow to a darker yellow. Let's do one more level of darkness. So, level of darkness. Level of darkness. I'll use the selection tool to grab that color, the darker color, and then slide down the blackness slider. So, oops. And then start painting in a little bit of the darkest shadows we'll have in the image. Grab the eraser tool and erase those 2 little missteps there and there. Yeah, and that's looking pretty good. So don't forget to save your project, and it might ask you for a name. I've already named mine earlier, so I'll just save it, and then we are ready to export. So then we go up in the upper right, click export. So here's where we can resize the image that we started with. So we started with a 16 by 16 size canvas, which is in reality tiny, 16 by 16 pixels. So we want to make it much bigger. So let's slide this slider all the way up until we get about 1024 by 1024. Yeah, that looks good. And then we will go ahead and save that to the camera roll. So you'll find it here in the photos And there is my little chickie, looking pretty cute. So there you have your finished pixel painting. In one of my next videos, I'll show you how to add motion and export it as a GIF file, whatever you want to call it. And until then, I look forward to seeing what pixel paintings you guys have made, and see you in the next video.